Hi everyone, my name's Caitlin. I'm a physio here at Strength Bayside. Welcome to our Mums and Bubs live Facebook class. So just a few things that I'll go through before we start. Hopefully you've all got set up with a mat and a towel and your babies if they're awake at the moment. So today's session is aimed mainly at that introductory level postnatal stage. So anyone who's had their 6-week checkup from their obstetrician or GP and been cleared to exercise, you're pretty good to give this a go. I do want you just to take into consideration how you're feeling, and two, if you've got any other concerns. So if you have any pelvic floor dysfunction since having your baby, so whether that's some stress sort of incontinence, so leaking when you're coughing, sneezing, laughing, or if it is some increased urge or frequency, if you're noticing any heaviness in your pelvic floor, or also pain in your pelvic floor with either exercise or intercourse. They're all things to just take in mind, and if you are noticing those, I'd recommend you go and seek some advice from either a physiotherapist or a women's health physio to help point you in the right direction of what you need to be doing to settle that down before you start exercising, just to make sure it's safe. The other things just to take into consideration are if you've had any pelvic girdle pain or sacroiliac joint pain during pregnancy that hasn't resolved, there will be a few exercises that you want to be a bit careful with, mainly single leg exercises and things like that. But just note any discomfort, stop doing the exercise. Other than that, just making sure you've been cleared, as I said, to exercise, and we can get started. Biggest thing though is making sure that you're actually breathing through all the exercises. If you find that you are holding your breath, you're not necessarily doing your body much good, so you just need to make sure that you're breathing as you're doing these. Alright, so what we're going to do is get started on your hands and knees. So for this one, I generally pop your baby underneath you, and that way you can be, they can be looking at you, which always makes them a bit happier. If you can exercise while they're happy, makes it a little bit easier. Alright, so make sure that your hips and knees are in line, and that your hands are directly underneath your shoulders. So we're just going to start with some pelvic tilts. So rocking your pelvis back and forth, okay, just to try and get some movement. During pregnancy, movement in both of these directions can get a little bit limited and can get quite stiff. So we just want to get the lower back moving nice and smoothly. Breathing as you come up and down. Now, if when you're on your hands and knees, if you've had any wrist or thumb pain, so things like de Quervain veins, or any carpal tunnel, or just realistically any wrist pain at all, you've got a few options here. So first of all, you can just try and be on your wrist for a short period of time each exercise. The other option is you can come up onto your fists. Or if you've got some hand weights or a towel, you can roll up your towel. Just keep going with your pelvic tilts while I'm talking. You can roll up your towel and pop it underneath your wrists, or you can grip it as well to keep your wrists more in line. There's a few different things. Sometimes you might find none of those will work, and if that's the case, we'd probably recommend avoiding some 4-point kneel position. Otherwise, you can drop onto your hands and knees. Not so easy for your pelvic tilts, onto your elbows, sorry. Not so easy for your pelvic tilts, but for some of the other exercises, it's okay. All right, so now we're going to start with some leg extension. So beginner level, knees relatively close together, and you're just going to slide one leg in and away from you. Out and in. Okay. If you feel like you've got that under control, so what I want you to make sure you're doing with this is lifting through your pelvic floor as if you're holding in a wee, just really gently though, okay? And then you're going to hollow out below the belly button just slightly so that it feels almost like you're zipping up a slightly tight pair of jeans. And then using those muscles, you want to try and control your back position. So when you're doing this, and especially when you start to lift the leg, I don't want your pelvis to tilt. I just want you to go in and out, keeping your pelvis nice and stable. So we're going to do about 12 on each side. So if you're feeling like the slides are pretty easy, you can start to lift the leg. Just making sure you're breathing as you go. If you're still finding that's pretty good and you're a bit more advanced, you can start to extend the opposite arm as you're doing that. All the while making sure you're breathing and making sure you're not collapsing through the upper back. Okay, let's change sides. So you can do the opposite arm to leg as the most advanced level, otherwise the slides or the leg extensions. Good, let's do 4 more. Okay, come back to the middle. I'm just going to get you to sit back on your heels now, knees wide apart, and we're just going to drop down into a child's pose stretch. In this position, just want you to rest your head down, just take a nice couple of breaths. So depending on where you're tight, whether it's in your lower back or your upper back and neck, you'll feel this stretch. Some of you will feel it in all of those places. But just really trying to make sure that you can relax the back of your neck while you're doing this, and relax your shoulders, so you shouldn't be up here. Okay, coming back onto your hands and knees again. Again, you can come up onto your fists if you need to. Now we're going to just do some arm extensions. So if you've been doing both, you can keep doing both. If you've just been doing the legs, we're going to move just into the arms. So 1, and you can alternate. For this one, again, just thinking about zipping up, just gently. As I said, you should be able to breathe. Nothing you're doing should be bracing. Okay, just watching that upper back as we discussed, that you're not collapsing through here. Okay, so drawing those shoulder blades just slightly towards each other and away from your ears. Do 1 more on each side. Excellent. I'm going to come back down into child's pose again. So sitting back on your heels. This time we're just going to rest in that position for a minute, and then you're going to take your opposite arm, one arm, and take it underneath the opposite arm. So you're going to get a bit of a twist, thread needle stretch. Again, if you can, rest your head down rather than holding it up and sustaining it there. Depends on what's more comfortable for you. You'll get a little bit more twist if you rest your head down. I'm just holding that there for a few seconds. Making sure you can breathe. If you're over twisting, you'll have trouble breathing. Come back and twisting the other way. Excellent. Coming back to the middle. Now we're going to come up into high kneeling. Now this one you've got a few different options with. You can hold your baby with you on your chest. That's you're going to be adding a little bit more weight. So if you're doing this exercise for the first time, keeping your baby on the floor is ideal. So what I'm going to get you to do is cross your arms across your chest, have your knees hip width apart. So you don't want your knees really close together, you just want them hip width apart. You're going to think about your body like a door and your knees are the hinge. So you're going to be hinging back and coming up. Now with this one, you'll find if you go too far, you'll feel like one, you're going to break at the hips, or two, that you have to like brace and stop yourself from breathing. So I don't want you to go that far, I only want you to go the distance that you can control. So coming back and up and breathing as you go. We're going to aim for 15 here. You should feel this in your quads. It is called thigh stretch, but you also want to get your glutes working and those deep abdominals through the front. All right, so thinking about switching on all of those muscles and breathing at the same time. And this is one of those exercises that you'll always know you've done the next day, especially when you're first starting. It does get easier. 3 more. Excellent. Okay, so now what we're going to do is come over onto our backs. You can also pop your baby on your pelvis for this first one. Again, if it's the first session, probably recommend not doing that. You also want to make sure with this that your baby does have some level of head control. Otherwise, for obvious reasons for safety, I wouldn't recommend it. So either if they're a bit older and you're a bit more advanced, you can pop your baby on your pelvis. If not, just start with your baby by your side. So feet hip width apart, and we're going to do some bridging. So you can either pop your hands down by your sides if you have your baby. If you do, pop your hands on them. I'm going to pop my baby down for a moment just so that you can see how we want to do it. So feet relatively close to your bottom, hip width apart, coming up and down. So again, I want you to think about lifting through the pelvic floor, engaging the glutes, and coming straight up and down. The way down is just as important as the way up, because you want to control that movement. If you feel like your pelvis is wobbling as you're coming down, just want you to make sure, one, that you're breathing, and two, that you're not letting your glutes go completely. So a little bit of an extra push through your heels. And let's do 4 more here. Fantastic. Okay, just getting you back in a nice neutral position. I like to put my hands on the bony crest and just drop in on the inside, and that on the inside of them. And that way, when you're doing this next exercise, you'll feel if there's too much shift in your pelvis. What we're going to do is some leg extensions. So you can start just moving your leg in and out. For those of you who are just beginning, you might find, or if you've had any pelvic girdle pain, it might be better just to slide your leg along your mat. Okay? If you're feeling like you can manage that quite easily, do one leg coming in and out, and then changing sides. I want you to make sure that you're not allowing a wind tunnel to form under your back, because that will encourage you to get that rib flare as well. So we want to maintain relatively close contact with the mat. I don't want you squishing your back down into the mat, but just having it in a nice and neutral position, watching that your ribs aren't popping right out of your chest. Okay, so using those deep muscles lifting through the pelvic floor, engaging those lower abdominals, like you're zipping up those tight jeans, but just gently, okay? Not a hold your breath brace. One thing I didn't mention earlier at the beginning was just about abdominal separation as well. So if you have noticed it yourself, or you're assessed in hospital and you do have some abdominal separation, just first of all, I'd recommend being reassessed after your 6-week checkup. And secondly, that you avoid any sort of abdominal exercise like sit-ups and things like that. Some of these exercises as well, you might notice, say if you lift your head up, that you get some abdominal doming, is what we call it. If you're getting that, I'd 100% recommend you go and see a physio and just get the right exercises for you to help that. If you're still in the early phase, you might be needing some compression garments to help with that. But just making sure you're activating the right muscles at the right time. Let's do one more on each side here, and then coming back to the middle. All right, now we're going to do a bent knee fall out. So you're going to drop one knee out to the side and coming back in, and then changing sides. Now this one seems like a relatively easy exercise, but what you want to make sure is that you're not letting the leg that's staying still, you don't want that to either follow with your other leg, but you also don't want to counterbalance with it. So trying to use those tummy muscles very gently to stop that from happening. And as I said, that's why I tend to put my fingers here, because that will really help you get that tactile feedback at home to know whether you're able to control that. Range of movement, you go as far as you can control. If you find that you're only getting a really small amount of movement, that's okay. The stronger you get, the better you'll be able to control that, and the bigger the range of movement will be. Just doing a few more here. One more on each side. Okay, now we're going to do some lumbar rotations. So we're going to do some rocking of your knees from side to side. So like the last one, with the amount of movement that you can get is how much control you've got. So if you feel like you can go all the way to the floor, but you're not actually controlling it, and the whole pelvis is lifting up, then you're not doing it correctly. So it's still using those tummy muscles to just bring your knees back up. So to begin with, you might only start with a really small amount of movement, and that's okay. Now, remember, just had a baby. Just take your time. You don't have to be doing anything too strenuous too quickly. And just making sure you can breathe as you lift those knees back up. As a progression, if you're a lot further along, you can do one of two things. You can have your legs up in double leg tabletop, which for anyone who has not been assessed by a physio, I probably would avoid it. But if you're really advanced and you're doing this quite a few months along, you can do some knees rocking from side to side. Or better would be to have a fit ball and pop it under your feet. Okay, let's do a couple more here, and then we're going to roll onto our sides. Okay, so rolling onto your side. Now, when you are doing exercises on your side, it's a really nice time to pop your baby on their tummy and do some tummy time, because their head is going to be, obviously this baby's head control isn't great yet, but popping them on their tummy so that you can have that face-to-face contact with them, and they will probably like tummy time a little bit more when you're down in this position. Now, what I want you to do is just get your hips so that they're in line with your shoulder, and make sure you rest your head down on your arm. Lots of the time you'll see people in exercises doing this. When you're breastfeeding, you've got enough strain through your upper back, and even if you're not breastfeeding and you're just using you're using bottles, you're still in that same position. So you're hunching over, and your neck will get extra strain. So always make sure when you're lying on your side that you've got some good neck support. You may want to bring in that towel as well if you need a little bit more, like a pillow. Okay, so what we're going to do are some clams to start. So keeping your feet together, you're just going to open and close that top knee. Now, just like with all the other exercises, you want to make sure that you're engaging your tummy at the same time. Yes, this works your glute, but if you're not activating here, you'll tend to rock back and forth, and we don't want any pelvic rocking with this exercise. Just to note, if you've got any sacroiliac joint pain or pelvic girdle pain, just be wary of any of these sideline single leg exercises. If you're feeling like that's pretty good and you're doing well, you can lift your feet up off the floor and open and close this way. And then another progression, again if you're a bit more advanced, is by having a TheraBand around your knees. But today we're just going to do them without. So that's the example with the feet up and then feet down. If you're finding you feel this one a lot through your hip flexor, so through your quad area, you can bring your feet back a little bit behind you and see if that makes a big difference. So instead of having your knees in front of you, just bring them so they're in line. Okay, and opening and closing. Good. We're going to do 3 more here. Excellent. So you should feel that in your buttocks. Now I'm going to get you to keep your knees bent up and just drop the top knee over the front. Grab that towel if you need some neck support. You're going to stretch your arms out in front of you, and we're going to do a nice clamshell stretch. And open. Okay, this is a really nice one to do throughout the day, especially when you're holding your baby all the time. Between feeding and holding, you get really stuck through that upper back. This is a beautiful one to do. Just again, make sure that it's not painful. Excellent. Okay, let's swing around and face the other way. Okay, so resting your head on your arm again. I always pop my hand on my hip just because then I can feel if my glutes are firing. So you're starting with your feet on the floor. If you like, you can lift your feet off, making sure that you're engaging. Breathing. One more. Perfect. Drop that top knee over the front, rest your head down, arms out in front, and opening up. Breathing as you go. One more. And you can do that last stretch as much as you like throughout the day. Just to finish off, just to stretch the glutes, just cross one knee over, bringing the other knee up. If you're concerned about your abdominals and you don't feel like you have that control to bring the knee up, just stretching with it down here is perfectly fine. Just pushing that knee back. If you feel comfortable, you can bring your knee up to that position. So well done, you've gotten through that. As I said, quite a gentle session to begin with. It's not a race to get back and do as much as hard as possible. So just really gradually ease back into it. If any of those exercises did cause you any pain or anything I talked about, so there's abdominal separation, pelvic floor, if any of that rings true with you and you haven't sought help, I would highly recommend that you do. If you have and it's still not recovering and you're unsure about where to go with exercise from here, please feel free to contact us or contact your physio and get some more information. Let's get you sitting up, and well done. So I hope you all enjoyed that, and yeah, stay tuned. If we may do a progression, we'll see how we go, if everyone's enjoying those. And we do offer Mums and Bubs here at the clinic, so if you are able to come in and you're interested in doing some exercise with your baby and some other mums, yeah, give us a call. Thanks.